All right, folks, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar. We have Brandi and Bonni. I'll let them introduce themselves here in a second to share about the journey that Oklahoma has taken in building cross-system collaboration. But we'll go to the next slide. Just the usual housekeeping type items that you probably see on most webinars. We will be recording this webinar and we will email it out to all attendees a few days afterwards. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box. It's helpful to kind of be able to distinguish the questions from the hopefully ongoing conversation that happens in the chat. Please do talk to each other and to us, and we would love to answer questions at the end. You are muted. If you do want to be unmuted to ask your question later, you can request that. Next slide. So before I hand it off to Bonni and Brandi, just a brief overview of our agenda, and then I wanted to just do a real quick introduction to the National Center for those of you that maybe are not familiar. So we're going to do the overview of that, and then Bonni and Brandi are going to share about the work that's being done in Oklahoma. And then I'll close out with sharing some resources that we have in our knowledge hub around cross-system collaboration, and then ask you all to take a quick survey. Next slide, please. So the National Center for Adoption Competent Mental Health Services, we are about to start our third year, and we are working directly with states, tribes, and territories such as Oklahoma. Oklahoma actually was our very first site that we started working with, and we are so thankful to them for their ongoing partnership and collaboration. So we are working together with states, tribes, and territories to improve mental health outcomes for those children and families who've experienced the child welfare system. And we're doing this through a model called adoption competence, and you'll hear some more information about that today. And you can see off to the right our three goals that we are working towards, and everything that we do here at the National Center is building the cross-system collaboration that Brandi and Bonni are going to talk about. We are hoping to better equip the workforce to specifically meet the unique needs of this population and improve accessibility to adoption competent mental health services. And you can see we do this in a variety of dissemination. So in dissemination channels, in addition to the intensive TA that we do at the local level, we also offer these monthly webinars. We have a knowledge hub that has over 500 resources that is free and available to anyone. Along with other items such as our newsletters. So there will be a link that you can click on at the end to sign up for that. So I'm not going to take up any more time. I'm going to hand it over to Bonni and Brandi.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited that you're on here with us. I'm going to have Brandi introduce herself here in just a second. I am an assistant professor at the University of Oklahoma in the School of Social Work, and I work in Oklahoma as the statewide coordinator of adoption preservation services. So it is in deep alignment with these goals with the National Center of expanding competence of our professionals and also access to these incredible professionals across our state. And I'm excited for us to be able to share with you a little bit of what we know from our work. We know there's a lot of initiatives and a lot of really incredible efforts happening across our state. So this is by all means not an exhaustive list of all of the things and people and everyone involved in this work of coming together and making these things happen for families and kids. But we're going to talk about the things that we do know. So I will pass it to you, Brandi.
Yes, hello friends. So my name is Brandi Shearer, and I am a state coach and trainer at the Department of Mental Health. I'm also bring a lot of lived experience with adoption and fostering, and so this is kind of in my heart beat of every day. So we're super excited to get to share what we're doing to come, all together, bring everybody to the table to really talk about ways that, like Bonni has already mentioned, to bring easily accessible resources services for families. Oftentimes, they're just not sure how to access these. And so if we can simplify that and come all together, that's even better. And so let's dive in. And I'm excited to get to spend this time with you. And of course, if you have questions, be keeping those in your mind so that at the end we can talk about it and brainstorm together. So Oklahoma is, we can work on our first slide here. Oklahoma is making big strides. I mean, we are really working to bring families and children together by recognizing that our systems need to come together and all have a seat at the table. So I think that's a big part of it, is getting everybody at the table together. Oftentimes there's a lot of different amazing things going on per agency, but if we don't all come together, we may not even be aware or know about some of these things that are going on. So that is kind of what we're all doing right now with some of these cross agency collaborations, is bringing the agencies to the table and saying, what do you offer? And how are families able to access and benefit from the services that you offer? And then of course that, because of those conversations that come from that, will point out gaps. And then we're able to say, wow, we do have some areas that we need to fill. Let's figure out how all together we can get these gaps filled together.
Yeah, and if I could just add a little bit about that, the concept of being able to have everyone at the table is something that we all understand really well within multidisciplinary teams and all of that. But I think something that's been a little bit different about what we've been involved in is it really feels like grassroots, where we are bringing new people all the time to the conversation, saying who isn't here that should be here, who knows something that we don't know yet or that we haven't talked about yet. And so it's an ongoing organic thing of continuing these questions, continuing this conversation, and not just a one session conversation and then action. Now, there is action for sure, but it's an ongoing question of what's happening. How can we connect to it? What are the gaps in accessing and in some of the services available?
Yeah, absolutely. And, sometimes as we're all coming to the table, we do recognize that there can be duplication in services. And not only can that sometimes create confusion for families of where do I go? Who do I go to? But it can also create confusion among agencies, or those gaps even become, they're left. And so this is a great way for everybody to come to the table and say, where is the duplication happening in our services, and like, how can we meet that need? So why does that even matter? Most of you already know, if you're in this field, it matters because, oh, you can go back to that other slide first still. It matters because if they're overlapping, if services are overlapping across multiple agencies, families get very, very confused. It becomes inefficient. And then oftentimes we miss out because they disengage. They're tired, they're overwhelmed already. That's why they're seeking out services. And so they just become very disengaged. And then we also have heard from families in that lived experience that oftentimes they get overwhelmed. And so they don't know what to do. So they just kind of freeze. And we really want them to understand that there are services out there that are amazing and can kind of gather them together and say, you don't have to do this alone, but we've all got to talk about that together. And for all of us to know what we do. So that helps that streamlining. We know that we have better outcomes if we streamline services. If families know where to go and how to get the exact help that they need, they feel more competent. They're able to be more themselves. They're able to really truly walk in that healing that they're seeking, instead of just staying in a state of confusion and frustration. And so that creates a more sustainable support for families. And that's what we want to really offer with all of this coming together. Bonni, do you have anything about the processing mapping things that we're doing as well?
I think it's really the concept of what we were talking about earlier of what is out there and how can we identify, as it says visually, What exists? How are they all connected? And what are the best ways to bridge across with each other and also for families to be able to access? So it takes effort, I think, to turn conversations into something that is visual and that makes sense to people and that we can continue to make more sense of. Brandi, I don't know if there's any specific examples, but that's the general thought there.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that a lot of our agencies are coming together with this whole specific goal of processing these mapping sessions. And we're going to dive into that in the next couple slides a little bit deeper on what that looks like as we're collaborating together and kind of bringing all the people to the table. You can go to the next slide now. Perfect. So what does that look like? Who is at the table? These are just a few. Bonni said it very well at the beginning. This is not an exhaustive list. It would be amazing if we could list every person, but we are adding people to these tables all the time because we're recognizing that there are lots of really amazing things going on. That this is probably true in your state as well. Oftentimes there's really things that are going on that are phenomenal, that are just almost like they're a little silo or an island. And when we all come to the table, we get to celebrate that together. So some of the people that are at the table so far with this cross collaboration is Oklahoma Juvenile Affairs, the Oklahoma Department of Human Services, the Department of Health, all of these things listed right now. They're the people that get to come and sit down and say, what services do we offer? What gaps? And are we duplicating services? And the goal, of course, is on here. It's to build that more integrated family-centered system. That's what we want. We want families to be able to have streamlined services that they can just get right to the help they need. What else you got on that, Bonni?
Yeah, again, I just think it's so important to say over and over again that this is not an exhaustive list, and I don't think it ever really is. I don't think it ever ends, that we have enough perspectives coming to the table and giving us their their side of the story and how things are. And I really want to highlight the youth and family voice on this list. I think that's something that has been really, really powerful in some of the efforts that that we've been able to do in collaboration with the National Center. It's been a powerful experience to have a strong representation of youth and family voice. And when we say that, what that includes is actually a lot of different people. So I think it's adoptive parents, it's foster parents, it's adult adoptees, adults who have experienced foster care at some time in their life. And the youth, I actually clarified this myself to really understand what that means, is that young adult age between 18 to 25. So that immediate a transition into adulthood, which I think is some of the really highlighted time in life of a person who's experienced any type of interaction where with a mental health or child welfare. It's an important time to be able to hear what do you need? What do you wish you had access to? What do you know exists, or what do you don't know? And the cool thing is, I think we've heard so much of the voice of, we need each other. We need to be able to be connected in places like this, to be able to have the conversations, speak the same language, and really be heard, and not just tokenized. I mean, I think we talked about that quite a bit in a lot of our conversations, is that, we're not just highlighting a person with lived experience to then spark a conversation. Instead, it is they're leading the conversation, they're guiding the conversation, and ongoing, being integrated into the discussion of development of new things, new pathways, and really, really deeply integrated. So I think that's one really key thing here.
Absolutely. Yes. So here's a few of the current efforts that we're doing on this slide. These are, again, just some of the systems that are coming together and a highlight of what they're doing. Our CCBHCs, and that is for our it's community or our certified community behavioral health centers. They are really expanding their trauma-informed care, making sure that they're trained in the best trauma-informed care that we can give them so that they can then meet the needs of those families and allow the family to really drive the journey of healing that they're seeking. And then, of course, we have our systems of care. And I think the Resilient Oklahoma is also making sure that the Oklahoma Voice, I looked that up, and I think that's the Successful Adulthood Program. Bonnie, is that what that is? Because I think, yeah, I think that is. Yeah. So that's making sure that that group of people are really getting a voice in all of this. And then the Evolution Foundation is a organization here, an agency here, that they attend our coalition, and they are just very, very persistent in making sure that their voice of the community is heard in each different county throughout our state. And so they attend quite a few to build those bridges within the community. They really try to draw in the community members to say your voice matters. And we know the culture of each community can often change, and it's very diverse. And so they want to go into each of that specific community and say your voice matters, and we want you to come to the table and attend these coalition meetings and help bridge kind of that gap there. And they do a phenomenal job with that. And then our Oklahoma Family Network is what OFN stands for. And that's something that we've been working with, as well as from the National Center, is the Access Guide. And it's super exciting because I think it's going to make things really, really effortless for families that are in that high stress mode already, and then to know exactly where I can get services in a really family friendly language. So it's a way that they can connect to peers, find out what some of our lingo is. Sometimes we use a lot of acronyms and letters, and that can be really confusing. And so we break that down for them. They can scan it with a QR code on their phone, and it'll take them right to the access guide. And it's just in a really family friendly way that they can talk to. You want to do this one, Bonnie?
Sure, yeah. So I think on here, it's so community awareness, I think the is one of the areas of being able to expand just awareness of what exists, and then awareness of how to connect. And then also I think the awareness of professionals to connect it down to the adoption competent care of the developing networks, a community of practice that I'll talk about here in just a minute, even more so. And it's connecting with workforce training as well, of digging even deeper and being able to support each other across systems, all professionals, all family members, and those with lived experience coming together and saying, there are some challenges, not just in access and delivery of services, but just the impact of trauma on life, the impact of loss, the impact of these things on the whole family system, as well as the professionals that are supporting. So being able to reach into all these different areas of awareness of, hey, we need more connection to each other. We need to support each other and consult with each other on an ongoing basis. Things continue. There's not like one answer to everything. I feel like it's coming together and recognizing that, okay, this is something that all of us are invested in and all of us deeply care about. And let's dig in deep and create relationships, long-lasting relationships through training, connection, consultation, co-designing care, being able to co-design with each other, as well as, again, what it says on here, with families and youth, to shape those care pathways, hear that feedback of like, what does it feel like to be trying to navigate through all these things, and what would make it better? So that co-design is a really, really important thing to me, as well as a lot of these efforts.
Absolutely. You know, one thing that I love that we are doing here in Oklahoma is we're we're willing to be, I guess it's just being brave enough to have the hard conversations, right? Sometimes we just need to have the hard conversations that maybe things aren't working, or maybe they could be better, or maybe we could listen a little more or lean in a little more. And so I just really love that we are all able to come to the table in a humble way. I mean, it does take some, you have to kind of be humble to say we don't know it all, but we definitely want to learn. And we believe the people who are living this have a lot to say about that. And so we're leaning into that, and we're leaning into the other professionals who bring the heart and the experience and their skill set. So I love that part, because I think if all of us across the nation would just be brave enough to have hard conversations, and I think a lot of change could happen. So I'm excited to see what's going to continue to change.
I agree.
So
All
what are
right.
we, where, yeah, what, go ahead, Bonnie, you go ahead.
I think I actually have the next slide, so you go.
Okay, perfect. What we're working towards is dreaming big. I like to dream big. I do not like to be boxed in. So I love to dream really, really big for families and for help, for true healing. And I believe that that comes through a variety of ways. That is oftentimes not the traditional way that has just kind of like what we hear about it's always been. Maybe not anymore. Maybe we're making progress on that. So what does that look like for us? It's making sure that we have shared goals. We're all coming to the table, and we're making sure that we have a lot of alignment. We all know that often there could be the same goal, but if things are not aligned, you begin to pull in different directions. So we want to make sure there's alignment, which is having those hard conversations, making services easier to find. We know how challenging it is. I know personally how challenging it is when you have a child that really needs help and healing, and you are just at a loss, and the feelings of failure that can come from that. We want to help families eliminate that by saying the services are easy to find. Um, Listening to families and youth as the experts in their own lives. We can create systems all day long, but if we don't like sit down with the people who are walking out those systems, we're missing something vital. So again, that takes a lot of humility for us to just sit down and say, we believe in our mind this could work, but we're going to sit down with the people who are living this out, and we're going to get some honest feedback in a very safe space for them to share, yes, it works, or no, it doesn't, and we're going to receive that. So we listen to the families and the youth, and then we create these care plans that are really trauma informed and healing centered. We want that to be the goal, is for healing to come. That's why we want families to come to, services, is because there's healing that needs to happen. So we want to make that a shared goal. And then we're going to help providers understand what adoption competent care looks like. And Bonnie's going to dive deeper into what that looks like. How do we make sure that they have that? And that's going to create a stronger, more connected workforce. It creates stronger, more aligned families. And then also, I think it's a bridge for the two. So we no longer have professionals over here and lived experience or families over here, and there is a huge gap. We're bringing everybody together to really link arms and say, I bet if we figure this out together, we're going to totally radically change things. And that's what we're seeing. So how do we make that happen? I think this one is yours, Bonnie's.
Okay. I feel like a lot of this we've touched on, but it's designing those services with that family voice. It's sharing the tools and resources amongst agencies as well as among everybody at the table. So using shared guides, like Brandi was talking about that, and is at the end of this spectrum, that family access guide, using something that has accessible language and shared language. Trainings, which that's one of the things that we talk about quite a bit in the adoption competency, is access and utilization of the NTI training, the National Training Initiative for Adoption Competent Care. It's free, and being able to organize some different ways to access that training, dig into that training, take it and apply it to what you're doing when you're working with families and youth, and not just take the training. And then data. So data, being able to check in. How are we doing? Who all have we connected with, and who do we need to continue to connect with? So it's an ongoing evaluative process of what's next. How are we doing? Let's look back. How did that go? Just a continual process of looking through all of that and sharing that information among all of the partners involved. And then showing up in community spaces, so being aware of what's happening, because like we keep saying, there's so many good things. There's so many cool things. In fact, I have been introduced to so many things I had no idea existed in Oklahoma in these meetings, in these TA meetings, to be able to just meet each other and hear each other. And then the cool thing is when you show up and you're having these great conversations, and especially when you have food together or cookies or something, then you start imagining different ways to partner in ways that you wouldn't have had thought of before, because you weren't in that shared space to be able to have the conversation and just dream together. So people are really cool whenever they get together, right? And be able to have these ideas bounce off of each other and dig in deeper. And then I think Brandi did a great job of already describing the Family Access Guide as being a place that's a one-stop resource with language that's accessible and helping guide and map families through all of these myriad of different services and supports. All right. So I mentioned earlier that I am a part of the OU School of Social Work, and I'm also the coordinator for a research center that is the Center for Adoption and Family Wellbeing. And the reason I'm sharing that right now is because this is a really big focus and goal of our research center. And that's why I mentioned data and evaluative process as well, is because it is a movement, I think, an effort to be able to highlight some of these things and bring people together to have ongoing conversation. But it also matters for us to be able to pay attention to what's happening. How is this impacting our state? How is it impacting professionals and our families and our adult adoptees and those who've had this experience in their childhood? So we are engaging and really excited to continue to sustain a lot of the things that we've talked about. So these bullet points, some of them are in absolute process and not definite yet, but these are some of our goals. This community of practice that includes all the different parties that we've already talked about, foster and adoptive families, adoptees themselves, professionals from all those systems. And I also want to add in there biological families, their perspectives of how to connect with potential of openness and how that supports our kids as they transition into adulthood. And so community of practice is exactly what it says. It's focused on the practice of what we're doing, of how to professionally support and create services and some of that formal and informal, how to support the development and ongoing practice of informal support. But it's a community. So it's not an agency or a program. It's a community, which is a different word with a different vibe, right? Where it's much more open, ongoing, really relating to each other, building relationships. And like I was mentioning earlier, the goal is to help sustain each other, to be able to support each other with, okay, here's a situation that I'm like, I know a little bit of what this family might benefit from, but I have no idea where to send them because they're on this part of the state and what I know is over here. So being able to connect everybody in this community to be able to think through, okay, how can we connect that family to this service? Or do we need to expand it somehow? Who could do that? Who's in our community that would actually be available and interested in creating something new, if that's what everyone decides would be really helpful? So this foster and adoption echo line, we're talking about this because I want to show the breadth of the partnership among universities in the entire state as well. Echo, I don't know if anyone on the line's ever heard of it, but it's a line, a virtual sometimes it's virtual, sometimes it's in person, but it's the way within OSU psychiatry it's a national model, but it's a model that allows professionals to come together, share a de-identified case that is a really challenging one, and get a lot of really good expert level input and resources and just suggestions for next steps. And so we are in the process right now with OSU of looking at how can we start something like that is specific to this population, specific to our families and our youth that have experienced foster care and adoption. So that's one thing we're working on to really kind of be a central line to this community of practice. And then, yeah, building, expanding even beyond that, like I mentioned, the informal. So when I say that, I mean peer support groups that are focused on a specific, like adoptive parent support groups, adult adoptee support groups, adolescent adoptee, foster youth support groups. So those kind of that are structured and created but are run by the people that are a part of it. So it's more of an informal support. Not we know that people don't just need therapy, right? They don't just need this professional programming and support. We need that, but we also just need to create spaces and opportunities for people to connect to each other, to be able to say, I understand, I get what you're feeling. I've felt that too. This is what I did. Or let's just go out for coffee. Let's just have an event where we get together and we don't talk about any of this hard stuff, but we just hang out together and we get to be able to just enjoy life together. So those are some of our future focused goals that we are working on and we're hopeful for. And we have all the different systems and all the people that we've talked about being represented in these conversations.
I love that you talked about the community aspect of it so much because, guys, I think that's where the meat and potatoes is kind of thing, right? Like that is the substance of sustaining connection. It's community of connection and really being able to say, I need help. And I know if you, all of us probably on here at some point had felt in a moment in our life alone or like there's nobody that understands us. And then when you find that person who says, I've walked through that too, or I have a resource that was helpful for me, just that burden of weight that falls off of you to know I'm not alone, I'm not crazy. This is something that I'm really experiencing and it's okay and I can get through it. That goes a long way. And that's not just within the field of the peers, that's with us professionals too. Often, sometimes within our fields, we can feel very alone and like we are not sure if we're making progress. And then you talk to the other person across the other county saying, I'm working on that too. And oh, wow, that's amazing. And now we get to have a community together. So I definitely strongly encourage building community with all of the people. All of us should build community together. So yeah, kind of in that is we still face challenges, right? This challenge, we know challenges don't go away. There's no magic button. There's no magic formula that we're going to figure out and poof, all of the bumps are going to disappear. We have to face them head on and bravely, and we have to be willing to say what's working and what's not working. So some of the bumps that we have come across or have seen are oftentimes agencies have different goals. We are different alignment or different ways of working that may work for their community and the culture of their community, and it may not work for another one. So we're recognizing that and seeing that that can be a bump. We know that oftentimes families just don't even know where to start. Where do I even begin? Who do I call? That is often a big barrier for families. They know they need help. They just don't know who to call. And I mean, I've been in that boat, so I know sometimes it's really hard. Funding and paperwork, of course, can slow things down. We know that across our nation right now, funding has definitely been a barrier and it is being talked about. We have to be brave enough to say, okay, if there isn't funding from this avenue, what's another avenue that we can get it? And can we creatively think together and brainstorm together? Often paperwork can feel like exhausting. And so is there a way to streamline that? Is there a way to get creative? And so that is eliminating some of the burden of that stress for families and providers. Um, and then Bonnie, I'll let you talk on the last one. That's your wheelhouse.
Yeah, for sure. So I do a lot of research directly with adoptive parents and adopted adults. And I ask that question over and over and over again in different spaces. What is it that you wish you had? What is it that has been the most helpful, but also that you feel is missing, that would be something that would give you a deeper grounding or a sense of feeling heard? And I hear so often that I just need someone to get it. I need them to understand to the deeper level what that means. And so when we talk about adoption competency and the NTI and training and adoption competency TAC trainings, it's that. It's an effort to go deep into a large framework of understanding of what it means to get it. And it takes time. It's not just a one-time training, like I mentioned earlier. You can't just take NTI and then all of a sudden just be fully competent. It's a process. It's a lifelong pursuit, I believe. And that's what's wrapped up into our community of practice as well, is this concept of being able to practice side by side and dig in deeper to try to really understand and develop really good skills. So skills and techniques of how to actually support in all of these different areas. And when I say areas, what that includes is a lot of different domains, but the big ones that we know of that everyone on here is just going to nod your head and you get it, is trauma, right? The impact of trauma, understanding all the complexities and all the angles within that, how it impacts development, and all of that. But then also loss, and not just loss as we understand it when we talk about it, but it's a deeper, really complex and ambiguous loss that our kids have experienced in foster care and adoption, where there's a transition and maybe even a series of losses of an attachment figure who didn't die. So it's not the same as I've lost somebody who is no longer here. I've lost somebody who's here, and my relationship is different. Their role is different. How do I process that, and how do I grieve that? Same thing from parents' perspectives. How do I grieve the losses that I've experienced transitioning into this role? And then another major one is attachment, understanding. And when I say these things, I'm not just talking about knowledge about, but again, I'm saying skills and actual intervention activities and strategies to help in every single one of these. So attachment, relationship building, being able to understand how to navigate relationships with other people and maintain them in a really meaningful way. And then identity formation. All of those things impact the way that a growing person, an adolescent, understands who am I. And that's where a lot of the rubber really meets the road, I think. And I don't know what you think, Brandi, but I feel like that's when it gets really intense, is whenever you add on this layer of development and adolescence. All of us know that time is challenging for all of us. If you think back to when you were 15 years old, what did you feel like, right? Like some of your goals are trying to push those boundaries and figure out who I am as an independent person. But whenever you've had an experience of trauma and a lot of ambiguous loss, that can be really complicated and really confusing and kind of disorienting. And so being able to, again, have not just the knowledge, but the skills and the actual strategies to dig down deep and figure out how to help and support families in this space. I want to add one more to this, is, I've heard a lot in these conversations, I've heard a lot of professionals and families talk about, we can do a lot of work on coping strategies and managing symptoms. So managing some of those behaviors that come with all those things I just mentioned. But that's really kind of first level. And it's necessary. It's very, very critical, but it's first level. And we need to have skills to be able to get down to the root causes. And that's complex work. That's long-term work. And so being able to support when we say needing more training, it's not just, hey, you need a training. It's you need a community to connect to be able to really understand all of these different areas in a deeper way, and then understand how they interact with each other, and then understand skills and strategies to be able to really support healing in all of these spaces. So having that, you can tell just by me talking about how big and broad and in depth and complex it is. That's a big thing for our agencies and our professionals to really truly engage in the lifelong learning process. And something we've talked about as barriers among professionals is it can be really hard to access, which NTI is free, but sometimes I think people can access it and then just go through the training and don't have the opportunity to really dig in deeper and apply it to what they're doing, what their practice looks like. So part of the community of practice and some of the things we've been talking about in the National Center TA work is developing yes, a community of practice, but also smaller groups of cohorts of people going through the training and taking it deeper into their practice and understanding, how is this changing how I do assessment? How is it changing how I understand what my goals are with each of the different sessions that I'm planning? That yes, I want to talk about coping strategies and I want to talk about grounding for our kids who are struggling with some bigger behaviors, but then I also want to figure out how to get to grief, some of that underlying challenges that lead to the behaviors and the feelings that can be really complex. So this is it looks like a short list on the page here, but these are big things.
Yeah.
They're big things that continue to, be challenges as we all continue to work together. But they're big in the way that we can come together and continue to work through them together as a community.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. I love that. So how do we overcome all of those, right? How do we overcome the barriers that we are coming across? And it's building trust. There is a protective factors training out there, and they always say that connection is built at the speed of trust. And I love that, because trust is so important. And oftentimes the families that are seeking out services have had a lot of broken trust. So we are building trust with agencies across the state. We're building trust with families. It's having those regular meetings and attending with all of us together at the table. And like Bonni said, bring cookies, bring coffee. Everybody feels better when you have cookies and coffee. But just getting people back in the room together, of sharing ideas and thoughts with each other, I think is really, really important. I'm a very big proponent of trust. And I often think that they have earned the right not to. And so we have to earn the right back for them to trust again. And that takes a lot of time, a lot of patience. So that's one of the things. Erin, you said, how are we collaborating with kind of the other systems? And one of the things I'll share on what we're doing, and then Bonni can share on what she's doing. One of the things that we're collaborating with is we're all having these processing of maps, where we all come to a table, we attend a meeting that's happening weekly or bi-weekly. We come to the table in the slide that listed who's at the table. Those people are all coming together. We're sharing what services we provide. We're talking amongst it with either the directors, the supervisors, whoever is sitting at the table at that time, and sharing what they provide, and then ways that we can streamline that and make it accessible for families. So if we're overlapping, we talk about that. Oh, you're doing that, and so are we. What's a way that we can bring that together or streamline it for families so there's one access point and not 15? That's confusing. So we have to really be intentional. That's, again, this is a process. So we're working through a process of how to do this. And I feel like it's a lot of give and take, and that we try it. You can't be afraid to fail with this kind of stuff. You got to just put yourself out there and say, we're going to give it a go. And so a lot of this is us giving it a go.
I love that, Brandi. I absolutely love you saying that. And it makes me think about, I heard Another parent, the head of our Foster Care and Adoption Association, was talking about this type of collaboration and challenges, but also the beauty of it. And she described it as a 6-lane highway where there's so many lanes and there's so many people. And what works is whenever everybody stays in their lane, like building trust, I think, of like making sure that you know your role and what you're doing, you know, and you don't try to step on other people's toes or take over. But then you also are able to change lanes and communicate in a way that doesn't, everyone's going 70 miles an hour at the same time. But if you think about how it works in a large highway, people are weaving in and out in a most of the time really a really beautiful way, like almost like a dance. And I think that is a good, when you were talking about trust, that's what really came to my mind, was how we can continue to all move forward, stay in your lane, don't step on toes, but also continue to reach out, take risks together, have grace for each other when we're like, you know what, that didn't work, or hey, that's not cool, being able to say, I'm sorry, let's try it a new way. I didn't mean to do it in that way to overtake you or something like that. Just having real human conversations.
I love that. Absolutely. Yeah, it is a dance, right? I mean, all of this is just us learning and growing together, bringing our strengths to the table and saying, this is what I can offer, and somebody else saying, this is what I can offer. And then together we all sit down and say, wow, if we lay all of this out, we can create a really strong system of support for families. We can create a really streamlined way for them to get the services and the help they need and make sure that they don't feel alone in navigating that. So it's bringing the strengths that you guys have. Each agency has incredible strengths, and each individual working in those agencies bring a strength. So it's being able to recognize that. I love that. Centering family voice. Yeah, we have to make sure that we're, oh, sorry, we were going, I was moving on to the next one, but that centering that family voice, that means that we're listening and leaning in. Honestly, I think that's one of the things that we can grow the most in is leaning in and listening to the stories and the ideas and wisdom from people that have walked this. I've learned this myself and continue to learn this. Four of my daughters are adopted and they're mothers now, and they have experiences now being a mama that I never thought about them having to navigate, and how that brought up new emotions and new feelings as they were taken into the foster care system and then adopted. And so we're having to learn to navigate that now together. And so finding other people who have been along that journey and are farther on, and then connecting my daughters to them, has been so beneficial. And I have found that through support groups and through agencies, and being able to have networking conversations and saying, would you be able to talk to my girl about this? And just being that human and realizing that we all still need to learn and grow. And so we lean in and listen to their story. They are the ones that are experiencing the feelings. And so it's very valid. And if we come at them talking a lot, but not listening, I think that may help us, but I don't know that that's helping the purpose, which is to help them. So we have to be humble and really lean in and say, we care about whether this is actually working for you, and we want your honest feedback.
And I love, there's a great question in the Q&A that fits with this from William that says, how do we persuade youth to lean into their story and model how to engage in a culture of collaboration? I think that's a really, really important aspect. And we've had some strong voices, I think, talk about the importance, like I mentioned earlier, of not tokenizing, not just taking advantage of stories, right? And just being story collectors, especially whenever we collect stories that make us feel good about what we're doing. But instead, like Brandi said, being humble to hear about what hasn't been good, what hasn't been working. And then I love the question, how do we support, youth? How do we support adults in saying, this is what my story is like, and this is my experience now? And there's a lot of different strategic storytelling, I think, is training out there that's a really powerful training in how to take your own personal experience and be able to share it in a way that is not oversharing, where you don't come away from the meeting feeling like you gave too much away, and maybe even brought up some things for yourself that now you have to feel the impact of that. And I'm actually really glad, William, that you've asked this question, because as
Yeah.
Brittany said, I think this is where we can strengthen some of the things we're working on, is being able to actually help prepare those with lived experience come to the table in that way, so it doesn't feel like we're just collecting their stories and trying to, take from them. So I think that's something that we might need to add, Brandi.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. I feel like we've also touched on this last one quite a bit, of all the different shared tools, the training, the NTI training, coaching series for that, the access guide, and these meetings, building community and doing it on a regular basis.
So what can you do? We all want to know, right? Like, what can we do? We want to help. Whether you're a provider, an advocate, or a community member, you definitely have a voice here. Every person matters. Every voice matters. And so when you come to the table, it's finding the table. So how do we do that? Well, you can find your local coalition. That's a great way to find your voice. If you don't like the direction the coalition is going, you get to advocate for changing the direction. Hey, we really feel like this is a barrier or a struggle, maybe a challenge for our community. Can we advocate to address it, to talk about it? So that's one way, is find your community coalition and become a part of them. For us in our state, Evolution Foundation does a phenomenal job of making it really easily accessible, because you can go right to their website and click on the little coalition button, and it pops up all of the ones that they have. And so you're able to find your area, who the contact person is. So it's super easy to do that. So we can help send families to there, and then they can just go right to the coalition that's in their area. And that's super helpful. Of course, you can advocate for trauma-informed policies and funding. Find out what's working in your state, what's not. Advocate, advocate, advocate. I can't say that enough. That's what we do, and that's one of our strengths, is advocating. So do that. And then, of course, the center, the family voice. I feel like at any policy changing conversation, there should be a family voice present, because the families are the ones that the policies affect. So if you're having a conversation with about policies, about change, bring in some family voice to that, and know that they have a great value there. So we're really bringing that in our state, is making sure that in these big conversations that we're having, that we have family voice and lived experience present for that. But I also love how Bonni phrased it earlier, is that making sure that they're prepared. How do you share your story? How do you present that in a way that's honoring to who they are and what they want to share, because it's theirs to tell. So really preparing them for that is a great idea. I think we definitely can grow on that. So that's, yeah.
It's so important it's on here twice.
Yeah, I was like, wow, see? Exactly.
All
Well,
right.
thank you both, Bonni and Brandi. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A, but please feel free to put them there. We still have a few minutes that Bonni and Brandi can answer some questions. This slide is, and you'll get the slide deck in the follow-up email, but just wanted to highlight that in our Knowledge Hub, we have an entire section related to cross-system collaboration, where we are highlighting some exemplars, such as Oklahoma. Indiana has kind of built this interesting project, Children with High Acuity Needs. So there's some information there about that as well. So lots of good resources to find in the Knowledge Hub. While we are starting to wrap up, I wanted to also ask all of you, and I'm going to put the link in the chat, and you can scan the QR code in box number 1. We really would like you, while you're still with us, to take a few minutes to complete a short survey about today's webinar. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are hosting these monthly and really do review and value the feedback that is provided, and it informs our future webinars. So please do take a few minutes if you wouldn't mind. I also wanted to draw your attention to our website. You can see the link there, bridgesformentalhealth.org. We have a variety of information about our intensive TA, as well as our webinars, a blog post, and then the Knowledge Hub is kind of our main attraction. And it's full of open source resources and information available to any and all of you, and feel free to share anything that you find there. Should you or your agency be interested in talking with us further about intensive technical assistance, you can reach out to our director, Mary, and she would very much be interested in talking with you further and providing additional information. And lastly, the second QR code to scan is for you to sign up for our newsletter. So we typically only send out maybe 2 emails a month. It's like a newsletter or sharing new resources that we have created, and then also announcing our next webinar. So this allows you to kind of keep in touch with us and what's going on. So, okay, last call for questions for Bonni and Brandi. I did want to say, kind of a common theme as I was listening to you both, is just making time and space for authentically building relationships. And I think in this digital world, it's even more important to bring folks together when possible, and give them time to kind of just connect on a human level with each other. I've heard from other projects where, you build those relationships, and then when a child welfare worker is looking for a mental health provider for their families, they know just who to reach out to. And it's just when they're able to kind of spend time together. Sharing food, I think you had also mentioned some of those more informal opportunities really is where relationships are built.
I think that matters so much, Erin, of doing this with Brandi. We've been sitting in similar circles and things like that, but then being able to engage in something like this together, but also she and I got sick and I missed a meeting that we set. And we were just human, right?
Yes.
Built a relationship where now I'm like, first name that comes to my mind in her circle is Brandi, because she's the person that I've made a connection with, and we were able to be human. And, I apologized, and, it's just the real stuff is really what matters more than, obviously you want to be professional, you want to be good at what you're doing and very aligned with the goals and staying in your lane and all that stuff. Critical, because that builds trust too in the professional world. But being also just be human together and having the ability to navigate in different ways, and support each other, that brings that name as a person that I trust, as a person that also is going to have grace for me. And whenever I have what I feel like is a dumb question as a professional, I feel very safe to email Brandi now and be like, hey, I don't know what's happening. Can you please help me? And, what thoughts do you have? Because I know she has grace for me as a human, and also just as a lovely person, so I feel connected because of the experiences that we've had in multiple different ways because of these efforts of cross-systems collaboration.
Thank you. I feel the same way. I'm like, I know we could go have coffee and it would just be fine. But also, I know for me also, I think you guys as the people who set these webinars up, your tech support has been so important for us in building these family access guides. They have been just normal people too. And I love that, because I also think that's kind of who comes to my mind sometimes, is when having Sean there, Tim Marshall there, and being able to say, oh, let me ask Sean, I don't know. And it's just that humanity. So That's a
That's
beautiful
the
thing.
sustainable. When we're
That
talking about
is right.
building collaborations, it's not, you know, serving on a work group that's time limited. This is the where the sustainable collaborations are built and hopefully continue. And all in service of our children and families. Okay, well, I don't see any other. I was just checking the chat, make sure there wasn't any questions I missed. Well, I think we are wrapping up for today. So please, last plug to complete the survey. I'll stay on for another minute or so if somebody wants to ask any questions. Otherwise, thank you, Bonnie and Brandi, so much for your time and sharing your expertise with us today. Have a good day, everyone.